water-saving features that we'll go through. We don't have water-saving features such as the mixers and other brassware that you've got, but there's other water-saving features such as the urinals, low-volume flush toilets, as well as waterless toilets as well, which we won't go into today. We're compatible with most accessories that are SABS approved. Why is that important? Because when you get to a site, let's say that your the pan collar doesn't fit over your outlet because your outlet is warped. You check it, it is fully within the spec, but you've got a non-standard SABS pan connector that doesn't actually fit onto it. So it's important that other SABS approved complementary products are used. We've got electronic information available the whole time via our websites. And also another important thing is that we've got experience in fulfilling large contracts. There's a lot of, obviously those of you, especially the spec people, that have been involved in supplying contracts, it's very complex, and it's very important that you call on a bit of experience just to assist the contractor and the professionals involved, just to make their job a little bit easier. We do provide product training on site as well for plumbers. That is, I'll think of a number of sites that we have been to, which has also solved a number of problems. If you do have any sites where the guys are going to be installing certain products, it's then more convenient for us to provide training just on those products to the people that are going to be doing the installation. Because traditionally, it's the manager that comes to the training, and then he doesn't pass on that information to the people who need to actually do it. So we do provide on-site training for plumbers primarily. And the other thing, obviously, cost-effective, reliable products. Okay, I know some of you might be sniggering, but yes, I'll stand by that. Products are cost-effective and they are reliable. And of course, the other thing is that we I remember the Grower Dawn group of companies. Just some of the target markets that we focus on. It's actually every target market there is. You see it, hospitality, healthcare, education, commercial, which is office blocks primarily, shopping centers, sports and recreation. Some of you have been to the World Cup stadia. You would have, most of those you would have found our products into it. Then the three different types of residential: you get upper market, mid market, as well as entry level. Okay. Then if we have a look at some of the product categories. Okay, we won't go into too much detail, but I just want to go through some of the categories that you've got here. Firstly, we look at low-level pans. We've got mainly 4 low-level pans that we've got. Now, what is a low-level pan? It's a pan that sits on the floor. It's got a back entry, and it's normally used with a cistern, with an exposed cistern, but you can also use it with an exposed flush valve, or you can use a concealed flush valve, one that's either in wall or inside a duct. So the 4 low-level pans that we've got, you've got one on the extreme left is your junior pan. That one, there's a couple of details. When we go into the details of pans, I'll go into the details of that as to these as to the outlet, the inlet, and the type of flushing room that it's got. But that one is used primarily in a creche, or you would find it in some shopping centers, in those family bathrooms. You're not going to find too many of those in residential areas, but it's primarily in hospitals as well. You can find it. Then the one next to that is the main one, which is the Afsan pan, and that one is used in almost all applications. It's used to a lesser extent now in residential because the cost of a close couple is actually cheaper than a low-level suite. So you're getting fewer low-level pans used in residential areas. But there is certainly an application for it, and there are certainly still volumes of that go out every month. And one next to that is a clip pan, and that one is used primarily for replacements. You'll see that the foot of the pan is larger than normal. The reason for that is because if you've got a pan that you're going to replace, it was installed some time ago, and it's installed with cement, then by taking that out, you probably, when it was installed on the floor, and then you tiled around it. So what happened was the tiles got a little bit chipped, and if you want to replace the pan, the same pan that you fitted originally, you'll need to redo the tiling on the floor. Whereas this one with the bigger foot, you can then put it over those damaged tiles, and you won't need to retile your bathroom. You also see at the back of the pan, it's got an angled outlet. So that's called a 104-degree outlet pan. So it goes down 14 degrees off the 90-degree angle, and it goes down. Because in the olden days, all of the pans were at a 104-degree outlet because it required that fall to be able to go from the pan into the sewer pipe. Nowadays, we've got a horizontal outlet. If you looked at the pan before that, which is the Afsan, that's got a horizontal outlet. What also the clip pan has got, instead of a normal Afsan pan, the inlet, you would use a bung. So that's just like a rubber seal that the flush pipe fits into, and that bung fits inside the opening of the inlet. Whereas the clip pan is a little bit different. It's got a horn, and you would use a pan collar that will fit over the horn. So it fits over the flush pipe and over the horn. You can incidentally also use a bung in the clip, so you can use both applications there, but it's normally used with that pan collar. And the one on the right-hand side is the paraplegic pan. It's the Protea paraplegic pan, which is the tallest pan. That one is 470 millimeters high. The specification has been modified. It's to 480 plus minus 10, so that is still within the tolerance of the specification. So that's 470 millimeters high. The reason for that is because when you put a seat onto it, it takes it up to about 500 millimeters, which is the same height as a wheelchair. So the user can then transfer from a wheelchair onto the pan and the pan back onto the wheelchair without having to go down. If you go into a normal toilet, he's going to struggle to get himself up from the toilet onto the wheelchair. And with a paraplegic, he would probably be able to do it because he's able-bodied from the waist up, but for a quadriplegic, he's going to struggle. Now, all of those, you would have seen that on 3 of them, there's a little flush pipe sticking out. That's for the exposed cistern that goes onto it. Okay. Then if we have a look at the close couple toilets. Now, there's a wide variety of different close couples. This one is still the biggest volume product that goes into the residential market. And what you'll see on the top left-hand side is the Hibiscus Elite. Some of you may still call it the Hibiscus. What happened was the original toilet was the Hibiscus. It was upgraded to the Hibiscus Elite. Mainly the cistern is now a lot, the bottom of the cistern is virtually the same width as the pan, whereas the original Hibiscus, it was a lot wider. So this one is a lot more aesthetically pleasing. The pan was modified slightly so that it can fit the cistern. So if you do have an old paraplegic, an old Hibiscus suite out there, the Hibiscus Elite cistern is not compatible with the old Hibiscus pan. We can make it compatible by using a little bracket, but that's going to be quite complex. So just as a rule, we'll say that they are not compatible. If you look at just below that, you'll see the Hibiscus Elite front flush. Exactly the same pan. It's exactly the same shell and lid. The only thing is it's got a hole in the front for the handle, as opposed to the top flush, which has got a hole in the top of the lid. And if you go in the middle, you've got the Concord 2 close couple. Again, there was a Concord 1, not compatible with all. It was a different design. It was also had square lines, but it was also the sides were almost like a little bulge. Whereas this one is now has got parallel lines on the left and right. So that's the Concord 2. We'll have a look at the Concord 2, the fixing to the floor. You might see a little hole at the bottom of the foot. What you're going to use there, you're going to use an L-shaped bracket that goes inside the pan that you attach to the floor. Then you're going to put a bolt through the little hole on the side of the pan. It's going to go into the bracket, and you're then going to cover it with a little cap. If you go back to the hibiscus, you'll see that the fixing holes to the floor are vertical. So you just, all you do is you drill a hole into the floor, you put a wall plug, and you put a screw into it, and you put a mirror head, basically a mirror head screw, where you've got a chrome or a white cap that goes over it. Then look at the bottom right. Here you've got closed couple, which also fixes the same as the Concord 2. Use the same bracket, that L-shaped bracket, to fix the pan to the floor. But this one, which is the refined closed couple, that one is back to wall. So the entire back of the pan and cistern sits flush against the wall. So the installer would use a slightly different method to install it. He's going to have to use a flexible pan connector, like the Jolly Flex pan connector from Workwin, and you're going to fix that onto the pan before you move the pan against the wall. Then if you go,
I just ask if you can just mark or put a cursor on which bit of the pan so they can make sure which one you're talking about.
okay. Okay, guys, that's a little fixing hole. That is, you've got a screw that goes through there, a horizontal screw that goes into the pan and goes into that little bracket. There's a little L-shaped bracket that sits inside the pan. And it's the same one as you're going to find. Get my cursor right. Lost my cursor. Okay. Sorry, guys, I've lost my cursor. Okay, when it comes back, then I'll show you the difference. She's gone. Okay, guys, I've lost my cursor, so I'm going to be able to get there. If you have a look at the Concord, you'll also see that hole on the bottom, which is the same as that refined. Oh, there she is. Okay, now if you look at the hibiscus, that's the fixing hole at the bottom there, which is the same as on the hibiscus top flush. Okay. Then if we have a look at the top right-hand side, we've got the orchid wall hung close couple. This is a close couple that is mounted to the wall. It uses the same bracket as the orchid top entry and the orchid back entry. Only difference is this one's got a cistern. It's a top flush cistern, but very important over here, you do not have a bottom inlet. You have a back inlet into this one. And so the plumbing will need to come in from the back. So if you do a replacement of an existing closed couple, for example, an old Lotus closed couple, which was a bottom inlet, you're not going to be able to use the angle stop valve that's on the wall right at the bottom to the right of the toilet. That'll need to be chased up inside the wall to behind the pan. The other option is we can have a hole drilled in the side of the cistern, and you can have a side inlet. So you can then keep the angle stop valve where it is, and you would then just have an extension, a flexi connector, or a solid connector that goes into the inlet. Okay. There's a number of other closed couples, but those are the basic types that you've got. And if we look at a semi-closed couple pan, a semi-closed couple pan, when you look at it from the front, it looks exactly the same as a closed couple pan. The only difference is, as you can see on the drawing there, you've got a flush pipe that joins the cistern to the pan. And the cistern is not bolted onto the pan like it is in a closed couple. It rests on top of that little lip, which is at the back of the pan. So it rests on top there, and it is bolted to the wall. So where is this one used? It's used if you've got a wall and a floor that are not perpendicular to each other, and you're not going to find too many walls that are perpendicular. So the application for this is really when you've got a particularly warped wall. So if you fit a closed couple there, you're then going to get a gap between the wall and the back of the cistern. Whereas over here, you bolt the cistern to the wall, and it will rest on top of that little shelf, and it's not going to affect the aesthetics of it at all. So that's the main application that you can use this for. The other application you can use this in is if you've gone to use a duct cistern or concealed cistern, and you want to use a low-level pan. The problem with the low-level pan, if you fit it flush against the wall, you might struggle to get the seat to stand up. So by using this semi-closed coupled pan, you've still got that little shelf that rests up against the wall, and that's going to cover the flush pipe. So the flush pipe is not going to be visible unless you look at it from the side. That was used in a hospital once when they used that in place of a floor mount, or in place of a park down pan, because there was no stock. They used a daisy pan, and that one did the job. Okay. The other thing we look at is wall-hung pans. Wall-hung pans have become very common now, and as you would see from the range that we offer, we've now got a much bigger range. In the old days, we used to have just before the orchid, it was called the Peregrine pan. Now we've got a range of 6 wall-hung pans. The orchid pan is the only one that's available as a top inlet, as that image on the left-hand side. All of the others are available with a back entry only. Now the orchid is also available with a back entry. Just looks exactly the same. Instead of having a hole on top, you've got a hole on the bottom. Now the ways that you can actually, the flushing mechanisms you can use for a back entry, you can use a back entry concealed flush valve, either an in-wall or a duct flush valve, or you can use a concealed cistern, or you can use a duct cistern, one which is the same as a normal exposed cistern, but it sits in a duct, and you've got a push button in front, and you've got a rod going through the wall, which lifts the flush valve when you depress it. Okay. You can also use any of these wall-hung pans in a paraplegic application, but there are other amendments you've got to do to the wall, which we'll go into a little bit later. Then if we have a look at the back-to-wall pan. The back-to-wall pan is essentially a wall-hung pan on the floor. If you look at that one on the right, which is the Entice, that's the Entice back-to-wall pan. It looks exactly the same as the Entice wall-hung. The only way you can tell the difference is if you look at the I'll get my cursor again. Yeah. Yeah. If you can see this little hole at the bottom there. That's the same one that we showed you a bit earlier. That indicates that it is a back-to-wall pan. Because we've had some occasions where people have bought this pan and have tried to hang it on the wall and say, well, I can't fit it to the wall, or vice versa. Because the only way you're going to tell the difference between the Entice back-to-wall and the Entice wall-hung is the back-to-wall has got that little fixing hole on the bottom, whereas the wall-hung has got the two holes at the back for the brackets. Okay. If you have a look at the paraplegic toilets that we were speaking about, there you can see on the left, you've got the orchid pan. Why it's got that single brick behind it is because there's a minimum requirement of 690 millimeters from the wall to the front of the pan. Now that pan is only 583 millimeters, so what you do, you've got an extra single brick wall, which then takes it beyond the 690 minimum. You're not restricted to using the orchid as a paraplegic. You can use any one of the back entry pans, because although it looks like it's a top entry, you've got that flush valve. The flush valve actually goes into the wall, and it actually goes into the back of the pan. So any one of our back entry pans can be used as any one of our back entry wall-hung pans can be used in the paraplegic application. Then you look at the middle one, which is the pearl paraplegic. It's called the semi-closed couple because you can see that it's not the pan used in the pearl semi-closed couple and the pan used in the low level. It's exactly the same pan. Only difference is for the pearl semi-closed couple, it's got that white cover plate, which goes between the cistern and the pan. All it does is it just covers the flush pipe, so it just makes it a bit more aesthetically pleasing. Whereas on the low level, you've still got the exposed flush pipe. If you have a look at the flush handle, this particular one, you can push or pull. The previous one that we had to this one, you could only pull. And the reason for that, which I questioned the architect when he designed it, and I said, surely you should push it, not pull it. And the reason being is that if you're a quadriplegic, you don't have the power to push. What you can do, you can position your wheelchair in place, you get your finger behind the handle, and you move your wheelchair back, and that way you can then activate the flush. That's why it's more convenient for a quadriplegic to be able to pull as opposed to push. But this one gives you the option that you can push or pull, which makes it convenient for the user. It's also more convenient for the installer because this one's a lot easier to install. There's only 3 components in this, and you can't really get it wrong. The previous one, the plumber would think that you got to pull it, so he would actually get it completely cockeyed, and whereas this one, you can't really get it wrong with the installation. And the last pan we're going to look at is a squat pan, and that one is used primarily in mosques as well as in shopping centers and public ablutions. You're going to find it when you find some of those garages on the side of the road, and you've got a bank of toilets. You're generally going to find one which is a squat pan. Now this one over here, we have previously offered a pan which is a low-level pan. It's called a flushspoeler. And that one has got the outlet in the pan is actually at the front of the pan, as opposed to the traditional one, which is at the back. And the reason for that is because you cannot splash when you are using the toilet. If you do splash, then there's repercussions to that. So whereas if you have like this particular one, you'll see there's a fairly large surface before the pan, before the outlet. So that's why it's got that to prevent the splash. If we have a look at the basins, just a couple of different basins. This one is classified as wall-hung basins, but which means the basin is mounted to the wall, just using 2 10mm fixing bolts. But you've also got the option to use a full pedestal, a full classic pedestal, as well as a half pedestal. Now, the half pedestal, you can use any one of the wall-hung basins. You can use that half pedestal because that design was changed a few years ago, where it's independent of the basin. Previously, you would have a spring that would attach the pedestal onto the underside of the basin, but then if that basin didn't have that hole, you then couldn't use it. Whereas this one now is independent. What you do is you fix the pedestal to the wall. So you can use the half pedestal together with any of the wall-hung basins. And if you look at countertop basins, you've got a whole variety of those. I'm just showing you 2 here. The one on the left is the Weaver basin. That's the biggest selling countertop basin. But this one is also can be a wall-mounted basin as well. It's got fixing holes on the back that you can fix to the wall the same way that you would fix the wall-hung basins, 2 10mm bolts. What we recommend with the bigger basins, of which the Weaver is one of them, is you use it's called a Weaver/Solar basin, and that's a waist support basin, an L-shaped basin which you attach to the wall, and then it sits below the waist of the basin, and you would then put your waist through the waist hole. You then put it through the hole in the bracket, and you would put your nut on the underside, so that secures the basin onto that bracket. So we recommend the use of that for the bigger basins. The bigger basins such as the Weaver and the Emerald basins, as well as the Concord 630, which is also the Solar 630, the hospital basin. And we also recommend with the Solar 510. So a hospital basin, it's recommended to use that waist support bracket because the chances are you're going to have to deal with some infirm people, and they're going to be using the basin as a support to lift themselves up. That's why we recommend the use of that Weaver/Solar bracket. The Weaver basin is also available with no tap holes or with one tapple. Then if we go to the one on the right, which is the Ultra Art basin, that one does not have a tapple, so you would either use a wall-mounted mixer or a surface-mounted mixer. Now the bulk of the countertop basins we've got are the same type as that, where they do not have a tapple. We are looking at introducing 2 more basins with tapples, and we've just got to go through the processes. One is going to be that same Ultra Hot, which has got a tapple on it, which we're hoping to get that introduced in the near future.
Just a question.
Okay, the Weaver Basin, this one that we're currently supplying is produced offshore. We do have a mold, and we have produced it locally. So any of you that have got a catalog, if you look at the Weaver Basin in the catalog, the code that it's got there, that is the code of the local basin. Now, which is a semi-punched basin, so therefore it comes with no tapples, and you would knock that one tapple out where required. Whereas the offshore ones, it's 2 separate basins. It's a 1 tapple and it's a no tapple, and those are the ones that we're currently using at the moment. The benefit that we had of the local one was that we could glaze it at the back. So there was one application where we had a customer wanting the Weaver Basin to be glazed at the back because it was mounted onto a surface, but away from the wall, and there was a mirror going all the way down to the bottom, and he didn't want to look at the unglazed surface and the surface with 2 fixing holes. So we were able to glaze that. We don't have that option at the moment, but what we can do, if you do have a customer that wants that, I have got a sample from Menderbath, and they are able to glaze the back part of the Weaver Basin or any other basin, and that one is fit for purpose. So if anybody does have that requirement, it is available if required. But at the moment, it is produced offshore. We have got a mold, so we have got the capability to produce it locally. Then we look at the underslung basins, okay, undermount basins, which are generally used in office blocks and also used in hotels, hospitality. And these are the ones where you've got a surface, generally a granite surface, but you can also use a formica surface, and you can also use marble and a number of other vanity surfaces. Granite is the most popular one. What you got, you attach the basin to the underside of the slab. I know some of you might be thinking, but I cannot drill directly into the slab. You're 100% correct. You don't drill into the slab. You get a piece of plywood, and you attach that to the underside of the slab in the same position where the brackets are going to be. You then drill into that plywood, and you would then attach the bracket onto that plywood. You would also use silicone between the top of the basin and the underside of the vanity slab to give it a neat finish. So you've got generally the one on the right hand side is the President Basin, the oval one. That's the high volume one. But we do have 3 rectangular ones of different sizes that have become very popular, mainly in the hospitality markets. All 3 of them have got their function. I know it's preferable just to have one, but all 3 of them have got their little niche in the market. Then we look at drop-in basins. Drop-in basins, okay, you know, have been around for a long, long time. The cameo basin has also been around for a long, long time. Still a popular basin because it is the style of it is consistent with virtually every toilet. Whether you've got a square or you've got a rounded toilet, it's consistent and it won't be out of place with any toilet from our range. The cameo comes with 3 semi-punch tapples. It also comes with no overflow hole. You'll see there's no overflow hole there. If you do require an overflow, we can prepare that. We do drill a hole there, and there's a little kit where you would have an external overflow. So it's not an integrated overflow, which is part of the basin. It's an external overflow. So it'll go around the back of the basin. And the other one you got there is the iceberg basin. Don't recommend the use of a overflow there because it'll be far too low. And we did have a request once, but when we did it, you can't put too much water into the basin, so we don't recommend the use of an overflow there. What you can do with both of these basins, you can install them as an underslung basin, because there is a flat enough surface on the top to be able to fix it to the bottom. So you fix it the same way as you do on the previous slide with the underslung basins, and you use the same brackets and use the same method, the same silicon method. I know there was a customer a few weeks ago, very perturbed. He said, no, but it's glazed at the top, therefore it's not going to be able to work. Okay, I can promise you it will work, and because you've got brackets that are holding it to the slab, and the fact that it's not glazed, if it's unglazed, it will bind a lot better, but not to say it's not going to bind if it is glazed. So you're quite welcome to use these as underslung options. If you go to that hotel, which is near the Tambo airport, I can't remember the name of it, but you'll find these iceberg basins and in an underslung application there. Then if we look at semi-drop-in basins, now these ones, it's mainly how this came about was people who wanted the use of a vanity slab and a cupboard, but they didn't have enough space for because generally the cupboard will need to be 600 millimeters wide. They didn't have enough space for that, but they still wanted the benefit of the vanity and the cabinet. That's how the semi-drop-in basin came about. It's also aesthetically pleasing. Some of the people actually choose it. There was an office block that chose this over a surface-mounted basin because of the aesthetics, where that front bit that sticks out, that hangs over the top of the vanity slab. You've got to be careful with the cutout. You just need to follow the dimensions in the catalog to make sure that you have the correct cutout for this basin. Okay, this one also has is glazed at the back because generally what you can have, because it sits away from the wall, you can have a mirror behind. So this one comes standard, which is glazed at the back. It's only available with a one tap hole. There's also been some requests of a no tap hole, but as that is going to be produced, we're currently making the Azalea 510. We're currently making that locally, but that one is also available from offshore. If we look at the corner basins, there's two corner basins. The one on the right, which is the emerald corner, that one can be surface mounted and it can be wall mounted. Whereas the one on the left, the cut, that one can be wall mounted only. Most of the time, this is really just in a compact area where just that little, you just got that little bit of space in a corner, and you'll utilize that by using a corner basin. Then the last one we're going to look at is the recessed basin. This is a basin that is recessed into the wall, and it protrudes only 150 millimeters out from the wall. So if you've got a small guest loo, which is only the width of a door, this one only protrudes, this raven basin only protrudes 150 millimeters out the wall. So you can generally put it quite comfortably between the door and the toilet. Otherwise, there's not too many other applications that you're going to find this in, because it is a very small basin. Then we look at bidets. Bidets are not very common here in South Africa. Generally, a bidet is common in the southern European countries, such as Italy, Spain, Portugal, and France. That's why if you go to Angola and you go to Mozambique, you're going to find a high incidence of bidets, both being ex-Portuguese colonies. We've just got the two bidets at the moment. We've got the Concord bidet, which is the one at the top, and you've got the Tuscany bidet at the bottom. The Tuscany bidet is the standard one that will be used for the bulk of the toilets in the range. So it can be used with the hibiscus, it can be used with the quartz, it can be used with the Tuscany, it can be used with the city. When we look at the urinals, okay, you've got three different urinals. We've got the one on the left, which is a sweet pea urinal. That one is available as a top entry and a back entry. That image over there is a back entry only. If you look at the pick in the middle, which is the lavatoria, that's a top entry. But if we go back to the sweet pea, the benefit of the sweet pea is that it's got that skirt around the bottom of it. Now, if you compare that to the lavatoria in the middle, That's got an exposed bottle trap, whereas the sweet pea, it's got nothing exposed, so you don't require a bottle trap there. You just require a mini rubber pea trap. So very important. If you use a normal pea trap, it's going to be too long and it's going to stick out the bottom. It must be a mini pea trap. If you have a look at the catalog, you'll find the details in there. So the sweet pea available at the top entry or back entry, or it can also be a waterless urinal. If you look in the top right-hand corner, that is a waterless valve, one that can work on all three of these urinals. And you can also apply, if you've got any one of these urinals installed in a normal application, you can retrofit them to be able to, you can change it to a waterless. All you do is you close the water off and you then change that, remove the waste. You fit this waterless waste. You just got to make sure that the outlet goes at a fall down and doesn't go uphill. And you've got to make sure that you don't put a P trap, because a P trap also acts as a water seal. And with a waterless urinal, there is no water, so it'll end up being a urine seal. So you just got to make sure of the installation of it when you install that or when you retrofit that. The one in the middle, the Levatera, that one is available as a top entry and a back entry. And the one on the right is the flat back, which is a top entry only. Incidentally, the back entry for a sweet pea and the back entry for a Levatera is exactly the same fitting. So you would still need to carry stock of both of them, so it's not going to help to carry, but to carry that as a spare, it's compatible with both of those. And if you look at the sinks, you've got the it's known as a 2-3-4-5 sink. That is the one you've got over there. Some of you may not be aware of it, but the local one is was produced, which is 435 by 335 millimeters. That image over there comes from offshore at 450 by 335, and the difference between this one and the local one is this one. It can sit directly onto a surface, and whereas the local one, the outlet protrudes, so it can't, the whole thing can't sit directly onto the surface.
So just a question.
Yeah.
The waterless urinals.
Yeah.
How much water maintenance and stuff does it need?
Okay, the maintenance for a waterless urinal, what's required? It's got to be maintained daily. So the problem that we've had on sites is I think, oh great, I've got a waterless urinal, I'm going to save water, I don't have to spend money on a flush valve, so therefore I'm going to install it and I'm going to leave it. Okay, if you do that, it's going to start smelling. What needs to be done? It needs to be wiped with a damp cloth every single day. The reason for that is because you're still going to get the outside of the urinal. It will need to be cleaned. So what's going to have to happen, just with a damp cloth, don't use any handy Andy or anything like that, just a damp cloth, and all you do is you're going to wipe it. And periodically, which is once a month, you're going to take the valve out and you're going to pour some water down into the outlet just to make sure that you're not going to get any scaling that's been picked up there. But apart from that, you're not going to require anything else. There's a few other manufacturers that have got some materials that you can use. You can certainly use those, but with this one over here, all you're going to need is just a damp cloth to clean it. Getting back to the sinks, okay, so what you've got that 2-3, now that one is known as a 2-3-4-5-01, that new one, which is the 450 by 335. So what I'm encouraging you all, if you do have any customers requiring the lab sink, can you please just inform them that that is the one that's going to be available, as opposed to the 2-3-4-5-00.
Question is, what waste do you use? The big bell first or the normal footing?
What on the sinks?
Yeah.
Okay. Now you don't use a Belfast waste on here. This one you can use a 40 mil waste. If you have a look at the sink in the middle, that is the 600 by 400 sink. That one uses a waste which is an 86 millimeter flange, and it's a 89 millimeter thread. And that one is it must also be a an unslotted waste because there's no overflow, so it must be unslotted, and it's a 40 mil waste. The one on the top left, that'll use a 40 mil, and the flange I think is about 63 millimeters. That's the standard. I think it's a standard bath waste, so it's about 63 millimeters. Then if you look at the drip sink on the top right-hand corner, that one is used in a couple of different applications. They can be used in an office block, in a cleaner's room, and what you do there is it's got that grid on the top, and so the bucket of dirty water will be brought into the cleaner's room, will be placed on top of there, and then when they need to empty it, you lift the grid up, and you then pour the contents into the sink. It's also used in a clinic because a little bit further on we're going to see a slop hopper combination, which is made up of a number of different items. This is one that can also serve the same purpose, but just not in a hospital, but just in a clinic. Most of the time that's going to be used in an office block. Then if we have a look at some hospital basins, what you can see over there is the Hajia basin. There's some contention about that at the moment, saying that it doesn't comply to the Department of Health requirements. It's been made known for a number of years now that doesn't comply. Yet, but that not complying is actually just a recommendation. It's not a specification. So what they're recommending is that it's not used because they don't want the big splashback at the back, but it is still very widely used at the moment. There was also a contention about the Cobra mixer, which also didn't comply, but it didn't comply to the recommendation, not to the specification. So you've got the Hydro basin, you've also got the solar. That one over there is the Solar 630. There's two basins. The Solar 630 and the Concord 630 are exactly the same products. Only difference is the Solar does not have an overflow hole and doesn't have any tap holes. But apart from that, the basin is exactly the same. Likewise, on the Solar 510, it is exactly the same basin as the Daisy basin. Only difference is that the Daisy basin has got an overflow, and it's got semi-punch tap holes, and it's also got a chainstay hole through the center tap hole, whereas the Solar 510 has got none of those holes. So in a situation like we've got now, where we've got a heavy shortage of Daisy basins, the Solar 510 basin is exactly the same. So if you've got any specifiers that need reassurance, I'm happy to speak to them about that, because what we can do to the Solar 510 basin, we can drill tap holes to the requirements, whether it be one tap hole or two tap hole. The only difference is it's not going to have an overflow. But then if it's going into a hospital, for example, then the requirement, the preferred requirement is no overflow anyway. So it would be preferable. So by using the Solar 510 in place of the Daisy, while we are short of it, it's going to be fit for purpose. Okay, and if we have a look at the slop hopper combination, which is made up of 4 different items. You've got the pan, and that slop hopper pan is actually the clip pan, and it's also got a grid on it. And then you've got a high-level cistern. That cistern has got a valve in it. Some of you will know about these old pneumatic valves. Sorry, not pneumatic valves. Siphonic valves. Sorry. Siphonic valves. The reason why this has got a siphonic valve in it here is because the siphonic valve releases the water very slowly. If you had a normal through flush valve there, with that high level flush pipe, it's going to splash, and you would have to restrict the water coming into the pan somehow, which there's another way of doing that. What you do is we actually use the siphonic valve there, so the water is really slowly, so it can then efficiently flush that slop hopper, the contents of the slop hopper away. Now, where's the slop hopper used? It's used in a hospital to essentially remove theatre waste. So the theatre waste gets thrown into the slop hopper, you flush it away, you then wash your utensils in that sink, and then you use the drainer for the stuff for your utensils to drip dry. Now, if we have a look at the differences between vitreous china and fire clay. Okay, vitreous china is used in about 95% of the products that we've got, and fire clay just 5%. So they say, but why do we still use fire clay then if it only uses 5%? Because fire clay does perform a very useful function that none of the other local suppliers or importers use. You do get some products coming in that doesn't. It's not called fire clay. It's called grey sanitaire, which is very similar to fire clay, where some of the very big products are made out of that fire clay. But if we have a look at some of the benefits of vitreous china, it's a very fine texture, and it's going to give you a smoother finish than fire clay. Now, a lot of the time, most people are not going to notice it, but if you run your hand over vitreous china and you run your hand over fire clay, you're going to feel the fire clay is going to have some little bumps on it. Not very pronounced though. They're going to have some little bumps, whereas vitreous china is not going to have it on. Whereas vitreous china is also, your water absorption is actually 0. So if you actually leave that out to the, if you leave it out in the rain, it's not going to absorb any water. Over time, if you do get a crack in there, it's going to absorb water. But water absorption for vitreous china, once it's fully vitrified, water absorption is 0. So that's an advantage of that. One of the disadvantages is that the shrinkage of vitreous china, it shrinks by 12.5% when it goes into the kiln. And with the shrinkage, you do get some deformation. So that's why if you look at the specifications, the SABS specifications and the European norm specifications, it does allow for plus or minus 4%. What we work to is plus or minus 2% for deformation. But what you've got with vitreous china, the chances of deformation is much higher than with fire clay.
Yeah. Question here. Laufen medical basins are a fire clay or not?
Okay, Laufen are, as far as I'm aware, they are vitreous china. And I know that you're going to say that, yeah, but those are very straight. What we could do, we can also make them straight. But what we do is, if we look at the standards that we work to the SABS and the EN standard. And the standard that we work to is a flat surface. The tolerance is 2 millimeters per 100 millimeters with a maximum of 6 millimeters. So if you've got any flat surface of more than 300 millimeters, the tolerance allowed is 6 millimeters. The way we measure that is you put a level onto the surface, make sure the level's straight, and you get a 6 millimeter Allen key. And if the Allen key can fit in between the level and the basin, then it's out of spec. If it doesn't fit, then it is within spec. That's a spec which is used internationally. So if we have a look at fire clay, one of the advantages of fire clay is that it only shrinks by 4% as opposed to vitreous china, which is at 12.5%. So you can make a bigger product. An example of that is when you look at, we used to have a solar 610 basin that was made out of vitreous china. We then changed that to fire clay. So we used exactly the same mold, but instead of putting vitreous china into it, we put fire clay into it, and that came out as a 630. So that was a good example of the shrinkage of fire clay being less than vitreous china. So you can make bigger products. You can also make straighter products. So if you have a look at the Azalea 510 basin that we make, it's got the straight sides. That's made out of fire clay. If you look at the Springbok basin, it's got straight sides. That's made out of fire clay. And if you look at the Weaver basin, when we made it here, it was also made out of fire clay with those long straight sides. The laboratory sinks, 600 by 400, it's also fire clay because of those long straight sides. Some of the disadvantages is it does absorb a little bit of water. It's like something like 0.2%, but it does absorb water. So if you do leave it out in the rain, it's going to absorb a little bit of water if you leave it out there for too long. It's also very difficult to get a very smooth surface because it's got a coarse texture. So if you feel the underside of a fire clay piece and the underside of a vitreous china piece, the unglazed side, you'll see the vitreous china that's a lot more smooth than the fire clay. But if you run it over the glazed portion, it will be a little bit bumpy on the fire clay, as opposed to the vitreous china. And the other thing is, because it's got that little bit of water absorption, it must be stacked undercover. It's going to go very quickly. This is the process, the production process. You start off with design, then you make a model, and then you make a master mold, which is called a case mold. From the case mold, that goes to the modeling, to the mold shop, and they make production molds off that case mold. Then you actually prepare raw materials. You take a lot of different raw materials, the same as baking a cake, and you mix it with water, and then you get what's called slip. So slip is a liquid clay, and you use that to fill up the mold. Then you go to casting. So you're going to get that same liquid clay, the slip. You're going to fill up those molds, the molds that were made in the mold shop, and then you're going to let that cast. Vitreous china, it's going to cast for between 45 minutes and an hour, depending on the complexity of the product. Whereas fire clay, it will take the whole day to cast. So that's also another difference between fire clay and vitreous china. So after casting, you're then going to have, when it comes out and it's still wet, that's when you do all of the punching. So you're going to punch out the outlet, you're going to do the semi-punch tap holes, you're going to do the chainstay hole. So in any of the holes, you need to do that while it's still wet, because then if you wait for it to dry, you're then going to have to drill. Then you're going to go to glazing. So that product then goes off to glazing. Glazing, the raw material cost of the glaze is 60%. 60% of the total cost of the basin is the glaze. So the inspection before glazing is a very important one, because if you find anything wrong with it, it's best to scrap it, so you can then reuse, because you can recycle all of that raw material. So once it gets to glazing and you glaze it, you then can't recycle that unless you put it through the crusher. Then it goes first fire, which is it goes into the kiln, and it spends 17 hours inside the kiln, and you will then it'll then come out, and three things will happen. Either it's standard grade, or it is scrap, or it is refire. Refire means there's something small that you need to repair, and you then put it back into the kiln. So after that, you then got that final inspection. That's after the second fire. The ones that need to go for second fire, you got a final inspection, and you got packaging. Prior to that, you've also got some cold patching. Cold patching is if there's something that needs to be repaired. It doesn't need to go into the kiln again. Most of the time, it's like at the back of a pan, not on a user surface. Normally on an unglazed surface. If you need to patch something, you can patch that, and you don't need to put that into the kiln again. Then if we have a look at some of our certificates, the factory is SABS ISO 9001 certified. That is the Vaal factory, not the Libra factory yet, but we'll speak about Libra another time. And that is the SABS 497. You'll see this particular one is expired because we're still waiting for the SABS to issue us with our new certificate. Okay, that's it. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to ask. Or if you would like to contact me, there's my contact details. That's my cell number and my email address. So you're welcome to call me at any stage if you've got any queries. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Thanks, Gerard. I'm sure we've all learned a lot today, and we thank you for your preparation and the executing of the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if there are any more questions. There have been a couple of questions that have come through, but I've passed them to Gerard, and I think he's answered most of them. I'm getting a couple of comments. Thank you very much, Gerard. People seem to have enjoyed it. Very good. So thank you very much, guys. Enjoy your evening. Drive home safely.